Ladies and gentlemen, it's so good to be here this evening, and we have Josephine LoRe as our feature about her "A Pearl in This Diamond World." I like that phrase. Josephine is a Canadian poet who has shared her work live and in global Zoom rooms such as this. Her words have been put to music, danced, interpreted in American Sign Language, and integrated into visual arts. She has two collections, Unity and the Calgary Herald bestseller, the Cowichan series. Did I say that correct? Yes, thank
You
you.
did, yeah.
All right. And she has been published in literary magazines and anthologies in 15 countries and 5 languages. Her poem Enough was selected for the Feed the Children PSA in the United States. Josephine respectfully acknowledges that she lives and creates on the ancestral and traditional lands of various tribes. And my friend, this glorious mic is for you.
Thanks so much. It's humbling to be here. Tonight's reading was very, very powerful, and I want to thank you for welcoming into the circle, even though I haven't been able to attend regularly. I live in Alberta, which is just north of the Dakotas, and it was the ancestral and traditional homes of a number of different groups of indigenous peoples, including but not limited to the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Nakota, the Kainai, and the Siksika, as well as the Dene. And I believe the Dene are down known as the Navajos in the state. I think Navajo was the Spanish word given to them, but their original name was Dene. So I've changed up the order of the things that I want to read tonight based on some conversations and some things I've heard. So I'd like to start with one, and Brett, we were talking a little bit about just about parents aging. This one is called "I'm Ready to Memorize Mother," and it was published in Canada in the Mothering Anthology. I am ready to memorize Mother, that new hesitation in her voice as she asks again if she's added salt to the tubettini bubbling in the pot. Every time I fly back and hold her, she has shrunken, one size smaller, shed inches of assurance, lost pounds of fierceness. I am afraid to delete her voicemail, even though she always says the same things. How are the kids? Wear a scarf, make some honey lemon for that throat as if I were still 12 or 12 again. And she's surprised at the recipes I recite to her from memory, expressions she taught me when I was a child. Sicilian expressions like "onde do senza tre," things happen in threes like my sisters and me. When she has grown small enough, I will fold her up and tuck her into my breast pocket so that she can feel forevermore the drumbeat of my heart. And thank you. I'll be integrating Sicilian into quite a few of these poems. The second poem I would like to read, I was having a conversation with Dan before we started about gardens, and I have one, not so much about the vegetable garden, but the flowers. Oh, and my October surprise is that I've been eating raspberries and strawberries, and usually those finish here in the spring or midsummer. So, yeah. All right. This one is called A Litany of Blooms, and it was published in New Mexico and fixed and free. I shall continue to plant until my garden contains every named and unnamed shade of green, from deep spruce harboring evening deer to silver gray wolf willow spray. Translucent lilac just before bloom, the prickle of nettle, the tremble of columnar aspen, clover conquering grass. I shall learn all the common and the Latin names rooted deep in Greek, golden splash euonymus, pleasant sounding, lobelia, gypsophilia, linum, creeping lamium, lilium, allium, alyssum, helichrysum, a litany of blossoms. Flowers for insects and flowers for birds. Armeria, Paeonia, Delphinia, Verbena, Campanula. Petals in a panoply of color. Bacchia blue, splash red hypoestes, coleus and creeping purple thymus, artemisia, fuchsia. From sun worshippers to shadow lovers, maidenhair and ostrich fern, Convallaria majalis, lily of the valley, muguet, in any language that first whiff of dappled spring. From ground creepers to celestial seekers, lavande papillon, butterfly lavender ready to take flights. Blooms whose words can cast a spell, lavatira, celosia, primula, auricula, scabosia, argentea variegate, cosmos sonata. De centra spectabilis, known to the French as Cœur de Marie, Mary's heart bleeding for a dying son. The sacramental, meadow-sweet bridal veil, then to far-off lands, Maltese cross, Spiraea japonica, Iris iberica, lemon cypress, Nanking cherry. Anemone sprung from Aphrodite's tears and the blood of her mortal lover, Adonis, whom she did implore not to go hunt boar, to no avail. The epic and the commonplace, Johnny jump-ups, petite pensée, daylilies and hardy roses named for explorers. Frobisher, Baffin, Franklin, the rugosas. May I never more plant a rose lacking scent or thorn, for a rose, indeed, by any other name, a rose. Thank you. I'd like to read now a poem it was written for an initiative called Poetry X Hunger, and the X stands for against. And it was Professor Hiram LaRue out of Virginia, I believe, who made the call. And the poem was chosen by Feed the Children, and it was put together with a video as a public service announcement, and it's called Enough. Would words be enough, I would sate your hunger. I would build for you a well, ever filled with waters clean. I would work alongside as you till the field, watch hope emerge green from brown earth. Would words be enough, I would end your misery, watch each child of yours grow strong and true, teach you to read and to write and to sing so that your voice be forgotten nevermore. Would words be enough, I would help you bear your burden, bring healing to your wounds and strife. See beyond lines on a map, beyond color, and you would know you are my sister, my brother, if words were enough. And if you'd like, when I'm finished the reading, I could put the link to the video into the chats. Thank you. And this poem, the distinction of this poem is it was the last poem I wrote right before the pandemic hits. Thistle. Thistle, hustle, gristle, muscle, epistle, tussle, chug and churn and feed and burn, wheel and wind, reprieve and sin. The earth turns at the same pace. It is we who accelerate. Missile, muscle, bristle, scuffle, whistle, rustle. We churn and burn and wield and yearn. Faster, faster, bites, trilobites, terabyte, ammonite, gigabyte, troglodyte, fight, flight, might, right, the world turning, turning as we accelerate, computate, titillate, abdicate, aggravate, demonstrate, chlorinate, complicate, correlate, scintillate, copulate, the world turning, turning, and we accelerate. I don't usually share, thank you. I don't usually share the pandemic poems, but I think this one is one of the few that, for me at least, is surviving the test of time. And it's called A Moment in Pandemic. The reverence of observation. Stillness, all else dissipates. Time curls up upon my lap. Perhaps this will save us. Chickadee in spruce, old snow retracting at the speed of glacier. A century ago, mountain morning, I sat in chill of first light, elk call resounding through the valley, the sound echoing through my chest. I felt truly what it is to be alive. I seek beauty in the everyday, a clutch of hens and chicks pinkening on lawn, sky reflected in a sheet of ice. I prepare lessons and see my students in boxes on the screen. My daughter asked, "Is this today or tomorrow? These constructs, what do they mean?" Fewer pedestrians, many averted as if this COVID could be transmitted through the vulnerability of eyes, the unpredictability of this plague. I raise a gloved hand and wave regally to motorists. Some wave back. Tonight, I read a bedtime tale to my nephew in Toronto. He laughed and laughed at the fierce bad rabbit and the man with the gun. I put my lips to the glass, kissed him goodnight 4,000 kilometers away, his hair still damp from the bath. Does anyone else miss Deerfoot traffic? You could have cake for breakfast, be drunk before noon, walk the block in your pajamas, eat ice cream from the tub, eat ice cream in the tub. Oh, and the civil disobedience. I cross on the red, do 40 in a school zone, dream of kissing strangers full on the lips, of riding a white stallion through the dead center of town. Thank you. I'm going to change gears a little bit. This one is called Sapience. We are sapients. We are sentient. We allow our eyes, our words, our hands, our mouths to speak. We listen with our ears, our souls, our minds, our spirits. We discover that connection which surpasses definition, the body of words inadequate, the words of the body exquisite. We are magnets to metal, candle to flame. We are smiles that overflow boundaries of lips, eyes to hands, mouths to hearts, to breath that beats together. Your boundaries overflowing onto my boundaries until we are but one unmapped country, one sapient, sentient, sacred space. Thank you. As an introduction to the next one, I would like to read a poem by Canadian poet Lorna Crozier from her collection, What the Soul Doesn't Want. And she was writing about her husband, who is also a poet, Patrick Lane, who has since passed. And he was sick in his old age. He was sick and he was losing his sight. And this one is called When the Bones Get Cold. So again, it's not my poem, it's Lorna Crozier, spelled Crozier. My husband sends me hummingbirds from his eyes. Only he and I know he's going blind. For him, I don't get old. His fingers, chapped from gardening, sand my skin, bring out the grain he cannot see. I am made beautiful by loss. The moon, too, grows more farsighted. Its light complements. The smallest birds don't disagree. There's a sweetness that comes from accepting what I am, not a mountain, not a river, not a tree. So I was inspired to write a poem, and I chose to write it as a response poem, imagining that I was Patrick Lane, her husband, writing to her. And I call it This Gossamer World, and it was published in Quebec in an edition called Femme de Parole. This Gossamer World. Eyesight faded with the years, my fingertips read her like braille. Her body become my geography, softness of belly, slow rise of hips, indentations between her ribs, a cage confining the beating wings of crane lifting from the pond. In this waning world, she is moon, she is screech of hawk, she is flash of blackbird red on cattail break of dawn. She is coo of dove, she is sow, hungry from winter sleep, crashing through the bush. She is the golden tremble of aspen before the fall. She is the wind that disperses from dandelion head, my final 1,000 wishes. And I have thank you. I have some poems of tribute and of love and some of grief that I've written to my family. And I'm going to start with a poem to my grandmother in Italian, in Sicilian, nonna or nanna. And this one is called Puma d'amore, which is how we say tomatoes, pomodori in Italian. But literally what it means is apples of love, Puma d'amore. Standing in a farmer's field north of Toronto in what would now be a street corner in Maple or Woodbridge, in her black dress, di lotto since her husband, my nonno, died, fazzoletto, kerchief, tied round her head, fallaro, apron, girding her equator. I knew her only as an old woman. And now I watch as my own geography morphs towards that same rotundity. My fingers furrow into those same curves. She, feet planted in that field, while we, children, stooped and plucked pomodori, filled balsa wood baskets. The color red, but the scent green, that burst of late summer twisted off the vine. Bushels driven home in the trunk of the straddle chief, tomatoes laying flat on blanketed garage floor, ripened and then peeled, crushed, strained, rendered into sugo, a sprig of garden basil for each jar. Only a few tomatoes ripen on my vine this year, my garden too little, my latitude too north. Attention sometimes waning, but I twist one this morning off the vine and bite into red memory. My nonna, standing in that field, black dress, fazzoletto, fallaro, seeds, and the warm juices of her childhood Sicilian summer running down her chin. Thank you. And this one is called Votive Red. I rode my bike to visit you, but you weren't really there in that box in the wall, were you, nonno? Oval photo, black and white, smile set, face square, grey hair, candle and red glass votive. When you died, your bones were laid to rest in the blue of Mount Pleasant, the right place, I thought, for eternity. Lazzarita e lo Zuramono, already there, she puckered and toothless, he filling the days after her passing, carving duckhead handles for canes. Lazzanuccia there too, but in a different section, for she had taken her life, and babies, so many babies, angels crying at their graves. My sisters and I wandered, reading aloud names and dates on markers, time gnawing away at the human signs of loss, while Papa, on his knees, clipped the grass with scissors brought in the back of the Pontiac, while Mum rubbed the plaque brasso brights. We bowed our heads. Papa would light the votive red. We visited you every Sunday, nonno, and I wonder now, had I lain on sun-warmed grass, would I have felt your heartbeat strong, heard your laughter bright, seen the shadowed wolves and doves you projected onto wall, the orange zigzag teeth you carved, watch you play that game again, fingertips tapping tabletop, 2 fingers, 4, I forget now the point of that game. I don't visit you that often anymore since moving to this jagged place where prairies crawl up to the foot of rugged peaks, and to tell the truth, I don't picture you there. They moved you from Mount Pleasant to that box in a drawer, a wall with plastic flowers, sad and dusty as the face of the Madonna. Back in Sicily, the cemeteries are like that, not enough space for the dead. I think of you this Sunday morning, olive coral flesh, wide-fingered hands, breath as warm as your smile, a secure child in your arms as you point out buds swelling in the trees, lift leaves to show me tomatoes greening on the vine, offer me tendrils to chew, tangy sweet. Tell me again of the grapes that grow in Sicilia. Laughter soft as the rough stubble of your cheek, tickling mine. I think of you, nonno, under open skies, grass eternal green, glowing flame in glass cup, votive red. 2 minutes, thank you. Okay. All right. This is kind of a political one. I wrote it shortly after the problems erupted in Ukraine, but I think it's still valid today. A single leaf. This poem is a leaf falling from a tree. This poem is the stillness after the last echo, the pause between an exhalation and the next inhale. This poem is gravel embedded into knee, an offering of thanks for a crust of week-old bread. This poem is the rumble of armored trucks, a deluge of debris. This poem is every story, every footfall walking further from belongings, step by step toward the safety beyond borders. This poem is a pacifier in the dead grasses by the roadside, family photos curling in the flame. This poem is fingers playing a white piano for the very last time. A baker in a land of foreign tongue braiding dough. This poem is centuries of steady leaving, flaxen-haired children playing in the grasses of the Canadian West, hearing tales of their babushka. This poem is the pattern finely painted on a Pascal egg, a ribbon woven, a dance steeped in folklore. This poem is empty lies and hollow words. This poem is arrogance, the hubris of ambition, a heart of anthracite. This poem is despotic, the color of blue sky, golden sun, a tattered flag at dusk. This poem is the world, watching, too afraid to condemn, the pause between an inhalation and the last exhale. This poem is the silence that thunders after the last echo. This poem, a single leaf falling from a tree. This poem is a doll trampled, a fountain withered, markings for growth penciled on a door jamb of a house in which the roof has fallen in. This poem is a whimper in the night. This poem is Syria, Passchendaele, Dakar. This poem is Dresden, Tripoli, Ukraine. This poem is polished leather marching in the mud to the counterpoint of hatred. This poem is a drone, the barrel of a gun. This poem is a daffodil sprung from ground, no one there to marvel. This poem is a prayer, unanswered in the dark. A graveyard, headstones tumbled in the tumult. This poem is hope navigating a blind sky. This poem is fear, the stench of death, a seed swallowed in the belly of the plenty. This poem is numb. This poem is sirens, air raids, blackouts, a mother shushing a wailing child, eyes dimmed by the hunger and the horror. This poem is robin muted, barn owl stunned into silence. This poem is humanitarian, drop by single drop, the cold press of metal. This poem is making its way over rubble, the body yearning for comfort, for respite, for home. This poem is the blue glow of late night news, the drone, the drone. This poem is Gallipoli, the Battle of Batoche, Beirut, Leningrad, Michilimackinac, Kiev. This poem is a weightless child born on weary shoulders, the elderly, infirm, left behind. This poem is the same mistake, repeated. Power, greed, and lust, and all the venial sins, and all the mortal sins combined, and circles, circles upon circles of inner hell. This poem is the atrocities of man, barriers, fences, roadblocks, undiluted hate. This poem is a cry tearing the veil of night. This poem is a leaf, a single leaf falling from a single tree. This poem is a stream running red, bodies rotting into ground. This poem is letters undelivered, lovers lost to each other in forever, babies not conceived and never born. This poem is fields untilled, unsown, songs unsung, country churches, windows smashed and broken. This poem is chickens left to rummage, cows unmilked, sheep unshorn, a horse dying of starvation on cold ground. This poem is the moon hung low in desperation, the deportation of Acadians at the point of bayonet, Tibet, Jerusalem, Berlin, their walls of wailing, walls of brick, the floating exodus of Vietnam. This poem is Mogadishu, Rwanda, the lost boys of Sudan. This poem is drowning in the harbor, the Noche Triste, the Fourth Reich. This poem is the West Bank and the Nile, the War of 1812, the War of Secession, the war against repression, the war against concession. This poem is a reed basket, Daniel and the lion, Samson shorn. This poem is David without slingshot or a stone. This poem is a leaf, a single leaf falling from a tree, a single tree floating on a river turning red. Thank you so much.
You may unmute, ladies and gentlemen.
Bravo.
No,
Thank you.
that was amazing.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Well, we traveled. Did we not travel? Wow. Wow. Lovely. Beautiful work. Very powerful. I'm gonna
Thank
take
you.
that in. Woo. Ah. Lovely, lovely.